Hey guys, welcome back to another video on this channel. My name's Millen and today we're going to be looking at some coding habits that you can develop, or if you've already developed bad habits, we can replace them with the good habits. So the first thing we're going to start with, is just going to go straight into it, is documenting your code. So what do I mean by documenting your code? Well, I'm sure you've heard it a million times already before. What my take on it though is when you document your code, you should document it as you go through the code. Don't say I'll come back to it, because we all know you won't come back to it, because that's how it always works. You know, you always say that you'll complete a task or do something, and then you end up never coming back to it because you're like, yeah, that's fine, someone will just get it from reading it. But have you ever had a scenario where you've had to pick up a repository from a colleague or someone beforehand, and then you get faced with a issue where you don't understand what the code's doing? These are the problems that you as a programmer should be considering for the future and should be avoiding, so they don't happen, and you don't have to put someone else through the grievance of, you know, reading the code for a couple hours and breaking down why you've done something like that. You know, you can speed up work for other people in the future by being considerate and writing code that is well documented. Just a little habit that you should get into, and I'm sure that your employers would love it. You know, if you're the one who's banging out code that has all the comments and everything on it, and it's so clear and easy to read. I mean, I would love it if I could see code like that. Next thing that I'm going to mention is planning code in advance and breaking it down. So what do I mean by planning code in advance and breaking it down? Well, when you start a project as a programmer, the number one thing you're probably going to want to do is just program, you know, just get straight into it. I'll work through the things as I get to those things, rather than just waiting and, you know, planning stuff. You're eager to go. You're ready to get behind the keyboard, you know, and bust out those lines of code. So what I'm going to recommend to you do is get a Slack and Trello combination if you're working in a project, or if you're just alone, you can use a to-do list or just Trello on its own. It's free. And you can also use stuff like Kanban boards on Jira and stuff like that. On these boards, what I want you to do as a habit, if you've got a goal and you're working on a feature or an overall project, break it down into tasks. So a task could be the profile page. Then break down the profile page into subtasks. So on this profile page, I want to have a edit user button. I want to have the display name shown. I want to see the profile picture for a user potentially. All these little tasks that are very simple to do, break them down and plan them out beforehand. So when you're coding and stuff like that, you can just stick to the tasks in hand and make sure that the classes that you write relate to those to the tasks that you've already created. It also lets you create UML diagrams and stuff like that beforehand, knowing what the program's going to do, what functions will there be, where can I class them together. So moving on from that, the next thing that I guess would link to this is all about low coupling and high cohesion. So what do I mean by low coupling and high cohesion? So low coupling is all about the idea of certain classes that are stored in one file, potentially, do everything basically. That's high cohesion. If I have a profile page, every function and class should all be stored in that one class basically. Why do we do this? Is so that if I make a change to the profile page, I do not affect, say, the home page over here. You know, everything should be contained in its own thing, allowing for maintenance in the future to be a lot easier, rather than having several different files that link to the same thing, if that makes sense. So think about it in the way of making your program not overly complicated and easily maintainable in the future. So that's just that simple tip right there. The next one I have is keep clean code. So what do I mean by clean code? Have you ever worked on something and then come back to it in the future after you've developed your skills potentially and thought, wow, the way I did it originally just doesn't work anymore. It's just outdated and overly complicated. Well, if you ever have to spend time on editing a function or improving some code from the past, don't be afraid to edit that code and make it better. It helps maintain the program and keeping it up to date with standards, while also allowing you to clean the code essentially. So those are the little things that you should be thinking about when you go back to visit and clean code. The next one is a quick one, which is called avoid feature creep. So what I mean by avoid feature creep? Well, when you're working on a project and you're being all innovative and coming up with new solutions to fix the problems that have been given to you, one issue you might run into is that you think, oh, let me add this here or this here. Well, adding all those things there and there are going to lead to issues in the future potentially where those things aren't utilized, but they have to be maintained. So if you have some guidelines in place already about what a program should be doing, do not stray off away from those guidelines essentially, and start adding stuff that's not needed just because you as a programmer want to show off, or you think that these functions might be useful. If you have goals, stick to the goals and go towards those goals. These 5 habits are really not that complicated, and I'm sure you're like, this is a waste of 5 minutes watching this video. But if you stick to these 5 things, I assure you, employers or anyone you're working with on projects will think that you as a programmer are a better person than someone who just doesn't do them, you know. It's hard to describe why I've mentioned these 5 in particular, but these are standards I live by, and I normally try and maintain in my code. I do sometimes forget, I put my hands up to that, but you as a programmer should try and implement these and try not to forget about them. And I assure you it will make your code easier to maintain, easier to update in the future, and just generally nicer looking and have less code smells. So thank you guys for watching this video. I'm going to have to cut it short because my light is dying. But thank you guys, and I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time.